Today on the podcast, we are joined by Marry Cotter, a chronic UTI and interstitial cystitis nutrition expert. In this episode, we explore what might be going on behind ongoing bladder symptoms. Today, we dive into the difference between chronic UTIs and IC, why so many people are misdiagnosed or dismissed, how the urinary and vaginal microbiome play a role in bladder health, why food is often misunderstood and not something to fear, what it looks like to support your body in a more sustainable way, and so much more. I hope you enjoy this very enlightening episode, just as I did. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get to it. Welcome to the Pelvic Power Podcast. My name is Penny, and I am the host of this lovely space. I am a pelvic floor yoga teacher who teaches people with pelvic pain how to use movement, breathwork, and body awareness to ease and manage their pain while living a pleasurable life. In this space, we'll be talking about all things taboo because we love it, and how to support your lovely pelvis and your lovely self on this journey that you are on. I am very happy that you are here, and I hope that you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the Pelvic Power Podcast. I am very happy that you are here today. Today we have the lovely Marry Cotter with us from all the way from Ireland, and I'm super excited to have her on the podcast. She is a nutritionist who focuses on bladder health, so we'll be diving all into that today, and I'm so excited to have you here, Marry. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Penny. Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for joining. So let's dive into you to start with. So if you wouldn't mind, could you tell us a little about you, how you let's start from the beginning. How you ended up becoming a nutritionist. Why? How did that start for you?
Yeah, so it all started with a urinary tract infection that just wouldn't clear. And leading up to that point, I would have had UTIs every so often, get the antibiotics, it would go away, no problem, move on with life. And then suddenly I got this UTI that just wouldn't respond to medication no matter what I tried. And I suppose that sort of set me off down this rabbit hole of trying different treatments and medications and therapies and like not really getting anywhere. And it started to feel honestly like really scary. It was, a very lonely place to be. And you just keep hearing like, oh, your tests are all normal, you don't have a UTI, it must be this thing called interstitial cystitis. And like, if you ever had a UTI, you know what that feels like, and it's really hard to ignore it. The symptoms are very loud, and it was just such a confusing time because I was like, I feel like I have a UTI. I have all the symptoms. I had intimacy. I got a UTI. You gave me antibiotics. Now you're telling me I don't have a UTI, but I still have all the symptoms. Anyway, so I was sort of at the end of my tether, and I was kind of then exploring this label of IC. And at the same time, I was actually in the middle of planning on moving to Australia. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I'm in all this pain. I'm really unwell. Am I still going to go to Australia? And my doctor at the time was just like, oh, well, there's not really much else we can do. We've tried everything. So you kind of just have to learn to live with it and get on with your life as best you can. So I went to Australia anyway. And that at that point, I was still kind of like looking online to see, oh my God, what else can I be doing to help myself? Because I think I'm just the kind of person who I'm not very accepting of a label. I feel like there's got to be something more I can do to help myself. Surely, this can't be forever. So when I was in Australia, compared to where I had been in the UK, there just seemed to be an awful lot of options in terms of naturopaths, nutritionists, and just more kind of options available, widely available. And that's really when I suppose my interest in nutrition started. I consulted a nutritionist, and she really helped me understand how it's possible that what I was dealing with was a UTI that hadn't healed properly. And at that point, of course, I had been doing the IC diet. I'd eliminated a billion foods out of my life. I was I'd lost weight. I was malnourished. I was really like emotionally just really low. It's a really emotional time and very confusing time. And she really just helped me understand that actually what I was fearing, which was food, was actually the thing that was going to be able to help turn this all around for me. So that for me, I suppose, was the light bulb moment where I was like, now I get it. Like food is actually my friend. It's going to be the medicine in all of this rather than food is the thing like that's going to trigger your bladder. Food is something to be afraid of. It's going to burn your bladder. So that was the light bulb moment where I think I started to recognize the power that nutrition plays when we're dealing with chronic pain and chronic health issues. And I knew at that point then, okay, well, when I get back to the UK or Ireland or wherever we're going next, that's what I want to retrain as and do all I can to help others and help myself further as well. So I never really planned on, this was not something I woke up and decided I wanted to do. It was very much a kind of process and a struggle with a chronic infection.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. First of all, have you been everywhere? Like you're like, oh, I was in the UK and then I went to Australia and now you're in Ireland and you used to live in Scotland. You're just everywhere.
I think it was just a time in my life. Like I was in my early 20s. So, I'm much more settled now, but yeah, it was mainly those three places. But yeah, that all just kind of happened. This was in my 20s, really. Like it kind of ruined my 20s because the way you go on a gap year and you want to go traveling, you want to go drinking and partying and like living it up for a year. And my gap year was basically consulting naturopaths, acupuncturists, getting like different treatments and massages, going for female health physio. Meanwhile, trying to hold down any kind of part-time job I was physically able for. So hanging out in Irish bars never, didn't really happen on the scale that I had envisaged. And it was a very different experience, but I learned a lot from it at the same time. So no regrets, but obviously I wouldn't wish a chronic UTI on anybody, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it's funny that you went to Australia because like that's a great place to go if you want to try all these different things. Like when I saw my first pelvic physio, I was also living in Australia. And that was where I saw my first pelvic physio. She was tucked into a corner behind a law firm. It was the same entrance as the law firm. So it was kind of like her husband. Yeah, her husband had the law firm. She was a pelvic physio and she just had a room in there. It was super weird.
That's so
But yeah,
funny.
it really sent me on this journey that I'm on right now and where I'm heading. So I'm like, that is so funny. But where in Australia did you go to?
I was based in Sydney for 6 months, and then the rest of the time I just traveled all over, like did the
Oh, that's
whole
so
kind of
nice.
typical backpacker trail. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was brilliant. Like, I mean, if I could have stayed, I would have stayed, but sadly didn't quite meet the visa criteria. But it was a brilliant experience, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, just a little side note there. If you haven't gone to Australia, go to Australia. I love Australia and I miss it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, the way that you work, because you were just talking about like the emotional component and everything, and food can be so emotional. Like it's emotional for a lot of people. And when you live with chronic pain, and especially in this field like pelvic health or women's health, it can be really emotional because you feel like you're fearing that you have to cut out so many different things. So I definitely see the work that you're doing has a huge impact in this community. And that's why I was drawn to you because I see how you're looking at food and how you're working with it. And it's just so impressive. So what did you so what did you learn about yourself once you started working as a nutritionist? So you went and saw these health professionals and you started diving into food. You came back to, what was it, Ireland or Scotland?
Scotland at that point. Yeah,
Yeah, at that
Edinburgh.
point. Yeah.
Mm.
And then you started your clinic, you became a nutritionist, you started your clinic.
Mm.
And where did you go from there to like dive deeper into IC and bladder health?
Mm. So for a long time, I completely avoided it. Like I honestly believe it, like it's a really stressful time, and I honestly feel I had some form, like it was traumatic. The whole experience of going to every single doctor and consultant and being told basically there's nothing wrong with you, or oh, don't be silly, it's probably just thrush, or oh, it's just because you sex and now that's just what happens in your 20s. Like just so many episodes of being fobbed off, and the stress and turmoil of just not really knowing what was going on. I think when I actually went on to train as a nutritionist and graduate, I just couldn't talk about it. I just didn't want to
Mm.
talk about it. I felt so much better. I think a part of me also thought, if I start talking about this again, what if my symptoms come back, or I
Mm.
somehow bring it back into fruition? Like, I think I was still quite scared of it coming back. And so for the first, um, gosh, maybe like 10 years, I worked in the field of irritable bowel syndrome because there is an overlap anyway between gut health and
Mm.
UTIs. So working in that field, every so often I would work with a client who had UTIs, but their main problem was IBS. And I suppose over the years, I'd start to share my story a little bit more. And then people would reach out and say, oh my God, I read your story on your blog. That's basically what happened to me. Like, would you be interested in working with me? Can you help me with my IC or my UTIs? So I kind of gradually then started seeing a few more UTI and IC patients. And it, it, it wasn't until 2023 that I jumped from being a gut health nutritionist to saying, no, actually, now from here on, I'm just working with people who have UTIs, chronic UTIs and IC. I think as well, part of me just thought, like, no one's talking about UTIs. Like, if we think back to 2015, 16, people weren't even really, maybe people were just starting to talk about menopause, and no one was like, few people still talk about UTIs. So I just thought it was going to be too weird and too niche. And really, it took me a lot of courage to experiment over lockdown, I suppose, with moving the business towards urinary health, setting up
Mhm.
packages that support people with it while still doing the IBS stuff. And then in January 23, it was just like, 1st of January 23, everything was UTIs, like overnight. I just changed everything. And I haven't looked back, because I think what I became to realize as well was all this time has gone by, like 10 years goes by since I had my IC or chronic UTI episode, and it felt like nothing had changed. Like all these women were coming to tell me, oh my God, like I have all the symptoms of UTI. My doctor's telling me there's nothing wrong. My doctor's telling me I have this thing called IC and just to avoid a billion foods. Like so many women are just left hanging. And now we know so much more about urinary health, partly thanks to all the research on gut microbiome and now urinary microbiome and vaginal health. And I was just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, how can all this time go by and women are still being just like, no one's really helping them? And I think that also gave me the strength to go all in on the UTI side of things, because there's a massive need for it, sadly.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of, I suppose, what happened since I graduated. And now I run a 6-month one-to-one program. I have another practitioner on my team. We also have a short course that's kind of self-paced. And um, what else? Yeah, we've multiple free resources. We've got a podcast, the Heal Your Bladder podcast. So I feel like since 2023, so much has happened and so much has changed. And hopefully, we've helped a lot of people during that time as well.
Yeah, well, it's changing thanks to you. Like you're one of the people that's making the change, so that's fantastic. And it's very interesting because thinking about the vaginal microbiome and the urinary microbiome, would you mind like diving a little bit deeper into that?
Sure, yeah. So, like, for a very long time, science believed that the bladder was sterile unless you had a UTI. And now we know that that's not true. And the vagina can also harbor bacteria that are associated with UTIs. So they can hang out in the vagina, and every so often they can move into the bladder. They can reawaken dormant E. coli infection and trigger flares, but they can also hang out in the vagina. And if you're not supporting your vaginal health and they're given the opportunity to multiply, then if you have an imbalance in bacteria then in the vagina, it can also mimic symptoms of UTIs, which is why now in my clinic we always test both urinary and vaginal microbiome, because they work together, they hang out together, and the bacteria move from one to the other. So I think that's the other thing that we're up against medically. Like, the medical model is very much focused on, well, I'm a urologist and I deal with the bladder, and I'm a gynecologist and I just look at the vagina. Whereas, we really need to be joining the dots here. And I think often that's maybe why things get missed as well. But yeah, so the microbiome, for anyone who's not familiar with that, it just means, a community of bacteria, viruses, yeasts, and their genetic material. And collectively, they're referred to as a microbiome. And they have lots of important jobs to do in terms of supporting your bladder health, because they take up space in your bladder. We want them to be the dominant species, the dominant player, so that it's much harder then for bad bacteria like E. coli or Klebsiella to take up space. So we're always trying to strike a balance between, the good and the bad in simplistic terms. And I suppose, what I see a lot of, and what I did myself as well, is like, you're like, oh my God, what if I have UTI? I'm just going to like go crazy with all these antimicrobials. We're going to go nuclear. We're just going to keep wiping things out over and over and over, without giving any thought or much thought to the good bacteria, which are protective. And the good bacteria also produce natural antibacterial byproducts. They help control the acidity of your bladder as well. And that's very important for controlling that environment. And we want to create an environment where it's very difficult for UTI bacteria to survive. So I think, yeah, just urinary microbiome is, if we can look at it a bit more like an ecosystem that's to be maintained in good health and good shape, rather than just wiping everything out and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. I had no idea about that. And that they can, like, obviously, they're so closely connected. So obviously, they would like travel up a little bit and hang out, as you were to put it. But
Right.
yeah, no, that is so interesting. I love that. So if someone comes to see you and they have bladder issues, they have UTIs, what is one of the first things that you do as someone that's a
Mm.
nutritionist?
So, as a nutritionist, the first thing we do is actually look at your diet, because often, depending on what you've already read or what you've already been told, it may have been suggested to you to avoid certain bladder irritants. And those lists, those yes and no lists, become very long. And
Yeah,
often people,
sorry, I just have to butt in. I'm like, I don't even have any bladder issues, but I'm like, okay, citrus fruits or tomatoes or
oh,
coffee or things like that.
yeah,
That's what I've read. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But what kind of gets missed along the way is the fact that our stomach changes a food's pH. So yes, tomato is acidic to your stomach, then digestion completely changes the pH of that food, and it's metabolized. And then by the time it gets to our kidneys and our bladder, it's completely alkaline. It's really rich in minerals, and minerals add a base. So it's it's just removing the fear and the scary language from some of these foods. Like, these foods aren't the reason your bladder hurts. Your bladder hurts because chances are you have a bacterial imbalance that has been missed or mistreated or unresolved for a long time. There's multiple reasons, but I try and encourage my clients to, if you've been avoiding these foods for a long time, you still have symptoms. That's not working. That's not actually changing your situation, and it's not creating the long-lasting relief we want. So we look at the diet, and I suppose the starting point really is quite simple in that, the way I was saying earlier, it's a very emotional time. You can feel really anxious, very fearful. So we need to make sure you're eating enough protein, because protein is going to have a balancing effect on your stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And when we eat more protein, we're going to feel much more calm, in control. We're going to be better able to make decisions. We're going to sleep better. And we're now fueling our bodies to fight infection and to heal tissue that might be inflamed, scarred, irritated. So we kind of start off with that really basic stuff, but in the background, we've now sent off your urinary and vaginal microbiome test, because we want to know what's going on in there at the moment, right? What bacteria are showing up? What bacteria are missing? Is there a yeast imbalance? Or is everything totally fine, which is unusual when people have severe symptoms. But otherwise, we're just kind of guessing, oh, maybe we'll try this supplement or we'll try that supplement, and all of that adds up. And we don't want to waste any more time or any more unnecessary cost. Whereas if we have this information from the screens, then we can start tailoring our program to meet your specific needs. And that's slightly different for everyone. So let's say it comes back and it shows that there is an imbalance in the bacteria. Well, then maybe we will spend the next month using antimicrobial foods, supplements, also working on your immune system to help you fight this imbalance. And from there, then we're also looking at the bladder lining and using foods to support the health of the bladder lining, and foods that have a nice calming effect on the nervous system, helping muscles to relax, helping you sleep better. If there's a hormonal situation going on, so let's say you're perimenopause or postnatal even, or maybe you finish breastfeeding and you're wondering why you have all these symptoms. Quite often it's a hormonal imbalance, and that's something nutrition can help with as well. So there's a lot of tweaking as we go. And I suppose that's really why the Heal Your Bladder program is 6 months, because we have a lot of steps that we want to implement. And sometimes we do need to change it depending on how you respond. And it takes time. And there might be a few bumps along the way, that's quite normal. But I often also just like to remind people that if you feel like you've had a flare, it's not that you're back at square one. Like, it's so easy to spiral back into negative mindset loop. It's so hard to live with bladder pain. So when you do have a flare, it can set you back. But I always just remind people that you're never back at the beginning, because you've done all this work. You've been doing all this work now. Mm-hmm. So your body will bounce back that bit quicker every time. And gradually these flares subside. And that's typically what we see with our clients. But that's, I suppose you were asking me what's the first step. And the first step is actually looking at what you're eating and drinking to support your emotional well-being and your hormonal state, and then diving into the tests. Because I think it's really tempting to rush off and order all these tests, and then you're not actually eating anything. So then you have these test results and you're like, well, I can't take any antimicrobials because I'm terrified of the ingredients, or you're so depleted you wouldn't be able to stomach the antimicrobials. I think sometimes just going in a little bit more gently, creating nice strong foundations, and then we get things back on track. if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. So when you're talking about antimicrobial, am I saying it correctly? Is that a supplement or is it food or is it both?
So it's a supplement. It is also food. So antimicrobial just means that a plant has shown to have antibacterial properties. Um, so garlic is an example, oregano is an example, and the herb uva ursi is an example. And
What was
some
it
have
called?
antifung.
Uva ursi?
Sorry, yes, uva ursi.
I don't know what that is. What
Um,
is that?
it's a herb, it's plant,
Oh.
and it's shown to have natural antibacterial properties. So it's not for everyone. So it is like if somebody's listening and and if you are on medication, just say it's worth checking with practitioner first if it's suitable. But there's lots of options beyond antibiotic, and that's not to say you can't have antibiotics. A lot of our clients maybe start when they're still on antibiotics, but they have a goal of I want to be off this in a year, or maybe they're on Hiprex, which is an antiseptic agent, and they've a goal to be off that by a certain point. So to help them get to that point, we want to support their immune system. We want to support all the systems we talked about, the urinary microbiome, vaginal health, all of these things, so they can gradually start to feel, more confident about their future, because oftentimes at the beginning they feel completely hopeless and that life is always going to be this hard, and it really isn't. And I do try and share client success stories. We've had people who've been through the program on the podcast just to share positive stories, because if you Google IC or you Google chronic UTI, like the stories are pretty off. Like there are worst case scenarios out there, and it can really again get you into a really awful headspace where you feel like it's just never going to get better. And your mindset is so important to getting out of these chronic pain spaces where we can feel really stuck, and I think that's something I've learned the hard way as well. When I was really, really unwell, I'd wake up and immediately scan my body for symptoms, or I'd wake up and immediately like press on my lower abdomen to feel how swollen am I today. But that's just that's just giving it so much more attention, and it's feeding into that fear loop that you're in a really dangerous place. And then your nervous system and your pelvic floor get really tight, and it drives the pain. So I'm not saying that's an easy thing to crack, but it is something we help our clients with as well. And there's a whole module on that in our short course, chronic UTIs, the root cause reset as well, because as you probably know, like pain can become really chronic even when we actually address the bacterial imbalances and we sort out the microbiomes. That kind of sensations can still linger, and that can take a while to shift.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. This is so interesting. I love all this. I'm like listening to every little word. So, how do you look on? So, I often get people that come to my yoga classes, they have bladder issues. Like, we have all forms of different people in class. And how do you look on supplementation before you've seen a professional like yourself? Like, are there any supplements that you would recommend? Anything that, or would you not recommend anything until you've seen someone?
I mean, I definitely took supplements before I saw someone. I think it's only natural to want to explore that yourself, because in the early stages, you're still hoping that this will all go away really quickly. So I think if you're at that early stage, have a look at like really simple stuff like D-mannose, cranberry. I know cranberry gets a bad reputation in the IC community as well, but both of those
Why? Why?
because people have been told it's acidic. But
Oh,
if we think about again how fruit and veg is digested and metabolized, your stomach is hugely acidic. So anything acidic you eat, the acid in your stomach pulverizes it, and the pH changes. in the digestion. But anyway, going back to the supplements, I would say D-mannose and cranberry, both of them are working on reducing the risk of a bacteria called E. coli, which is associated with UTIs, sticking to the lining of the bladder and the urethra. If you're someone who knows that every time you're intimate with somebody, you get a UTI or you get a flare up, that they are both like really safe, natural supplements you could do to help yourself. And if you wanted to take it further, you could use antimicrobials or have some in the cupboard for times where you are at risk. So if you're being intimate with your partner, if you know you're going to be traveling, if you know you're going to have a really stressful couple of weeks and you're more susceptible to infection, there's loads of antimicrobials to choose from. So, I mean, I gave a few examples earlier, like garlic, oregano, clove. There's a lot to choose from. And if someone is keen on exploring supplements further, I keep mentioning the short course, but it includes supplement guides in there for each step or each phase of the journey. So just so people are aware that is there if they need it. So as a starting point for supplements, yes, like you could try those, see how you get on. And then if you're still feeling like nothing is shifting, nothing is improving, it's probably worth doing the testing, working with a practitioner who is experienced in these tests and can actually help you interpret them and then action them. Because I often see people, they'll have spent hundreds on these tests and then nobody's interpreted the results for them. And it's not a like report where it's like positive, negative. It's like a report with percentages and numbers that need somebody to interpret it for you. And it needs to be interpreted in line with your symptoms. Because sometimes you can have certain bad bacteria, but be completely symptom free. So it's really important to consider the person's symptoms when you're interpreting these results. So that's what I would probably suggest. And food-wise, thinking about nourishing yourself, what food is going to help your body fight an infection, or what foods are going to help bring down inflammation, what foods are going to support your emotional well-being, rather than being absolutely terrified of food. Like, food isn't that dangerous if you're eating whole foods. And I can say that now because I've been through it. But I know if someone had told me that way back, I would have been like, oh, like that's crazy advice. But it's not. Now that I know how digestion works and how the food is metabolized, and having been through it, it was a turning point for me. And it was also, I suppose, the kind of the green light I needed. I wanted at that point, I was so depleted, for someone to tell me, okay, you know what, it is safe to eat these foods. You've done your best. It hasn't worked. You're still ill. You're malnourished. Isn't it time to try a new approach? And I think for anybody who's listening who's maybe there now, I just hope that maybe this is your green light to rethink that approach if you're feeling stuck and hopeless as well.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that. Thank you for sharing, Mary. Is there anything else that you would want to say to someone that is right now battling with IC, bladder issues, UTIs, and they're just feeling really hopeless? Is there anything else that you would like to share with them to get them to feel a little bit more oomph in life, a little bit more like, I got this?
Well, I truly believe you do have this, and things can and do get better. I'm an example, and I've seen time and time again with my own clients that it is possible for this to heal and for life to feel a whole lot easier. Things are changing all the time. Like, nothing stays the same in the body or in nature. Like, we're coming into spring, we're going to start seeing buds on the trees. Like, things are happening under the surface at a cellular level that we just can't see. So I think what helped me a lot, which hopefully might help some of your listeners as well, is just reading and exploring some of the mind body tools at our disposal as well. Like I find guided visualizations really helpful. I would imagine my immune cells like marching around fighting the infection, or my immune cells eating up infection. I mean, it all sounds a bit crazy, but
Oh, I love that.
there's
That's what I do
a,
too.
right? And there's a
Yeah.
lot more research on that now in terms of neuroscience and the power of our mindset and the power of our beliefs. So read things that are positive, whether it's a book or a podcast, like Penny's podcast, or for someone who's afraid of acidic foods right now, a great read is it's Alan Gordon. That
Alan
book,
Gordon.
Alan Gordon.
Alan Gordon. I don't know. I can put that in the show notes though for the listeners to
Okay.
find it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would read some positive things and soak it all up and then do the homework that the books suggest, whether it's visualization or yoga or pelvic stretches. I would do your pelvic floor physio homework because, again, that is something I found hugely beneficial. And half the time, I didn't bother my arse doing the homework. And I'm just like, why didn't I do the homework?
Yeah, and
Because,
your bladder's so connected to your pelvic floor, and if your bladder
yeah,
is overactive, your pelvic floor is probably overactive too. So
yeah,
yeah, definitely.
almost certainly.
Yeah.
And it's just when you're in pain, the thought of going off to do your pelvic floor stretching and internal release, like the last thing you want to be doing, but stick it in your calendar, time block that out, do it before bed. It will definitely speed this up for you.
Oh yeah, I have
Um,
a podcast episode on that, episode 65, I believe, where you can dive into tools that you can use with your pelvic tools so you can make it a little bit easier and a little bit more embodied too. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
That's great.
yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mary. It was lovely having you on the podcast. And I love the work that you do and just like fighting the fear mongering that may happen with food or just in the space in general when you were saying like don't Google UTIs or IC or what I should do because a lot of people are pretty negative and I can see that it's the same in the LS space. So if you go to Facebook groups like people are pretty negative and it's kind of scary sometimes. So
Mm,
I really love the insight that you have into this. So thank you so much for sharing today. And
yeah.
where can people find you? Where can people support you? What are you working on right now?
So I tend to hang out on Instagram mainly. So you'll find me over there. It's at marycotter.nutrition. And I've just released our short course that is chronic UTIs, the root cause reset. So that might be a great option for someone who
Hmm.
wants to explore supplements in a bit more detail, but without the need for testing or the need for one-to-one support. But for anything else, have a look at our website. If you are looking for an experienced practitioner in IC and UTIs, me and my team would love to help you. My website's marycotternutrition.com and you'll find all the details there as well. Oh, and there
Great.
is a free ebook, How to Heal Your Bladder with Food.
Ooh,
So that's
great. I can pop
on the
that in the show
website.
notes too, so people can find that easily.
Lovely.
Yay. Yay. Well, thank you so much for today. And thank you to everyone that listened in to this episode. If you have any epiphanies, feel free to tag us in your stories. Feel free to send me a DM or Mary a DM. You can email me. We'd love to hear what you learned about yourself, about your body throughout this episode today. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Mary.
Thanks, everyone.
If you love this episode, I will be so grateful if you could leave a rate and review in your podcast app. It would mean so much to me. If you're tuning in on YouTube, feel free to hit subscribe and leave a little comment down below about what you learned about yourself today. Thank you so much, and you have no idea how much I appreciate you for being here.